All right, we'll go ahead and get started now. Thanks everybody again for attending today's presentation on insider risk. So this is the agenda for today, kind of what we're going to talk about. We're going to walk through, what it is, Microsoft's approach to it. We'll do a little bit of demo, and then we'll talk new features, wrap up, and then if there's any questions, we'll answer it at that time. If you'd like to post questions as we go, feel free to do that in the chat and we'll get to them as soon as we can. Okay, so what is insider risk? Well, insider risk is the threats that you face as an organization from your employees or internal employees, right? Instead of the security aspect where it's an outsider coming in and attacking your organization, this is where an employee might be negligent with your data, uploading it accidentally to a site that's not something that you can support or not something where that data should go. Or maybe it is actually a malicious insider where it's an employee that's trying to steal your content from it. That's kind of the broad stroke of what insider risk is, right? And it's a very common issue that we see out in the wild, right? A lot of organizations feel vulnerable to this type of threat. We've spent a lot of money, hardening the outside shell, looking for threats from malicious actors, but the internal employee theft, that's something that, a lot of orgs really feel vulnerable to. Right, and it's again malicious, deliberate, and inadvertent, unintentional, accidental, as well as willful calm. That's a lot of the big issue that we're looking at here. And in fact, there's good reasons a lot of employees employers feel threatened by this. This is a study that came out of a percentage of employees that said they downloaded and saved content from work-related stuff to their environment, right? In each of these different industries, you can see there's a high percentage of content that has been taken with an employee after they left the job, right? And that's something that we really need to be concerned about and have a solution in place to detect that type of thing. And certainly, again, some threats are more significant and more common than others. And so Microsoft is aware of that, and they've built their solution to be there to cover those type of things. Some just real stories from why this solution was built and why it was put in place. A lot of it came from Microsoft themselves. Microsoft had identified this issue and they needed a solution to protect themselves. One famous example from, I believe this is Tesla, where the Sly Dog Gang, they've been named, really took a lot of patents and went and started their own company and took all of that content with them and started building cars using that same manufacturing proprietary operations that they had. And so we really want to protect your organization from it. It's great to have policies in place to do that, right? And so this is really common. We've seen this in news, but Patriot as an employer has also seen this where, as part of, this content of employees, we have had employees that have left the organization and taken content with them, right? And so it's a great solution to have in place because, yeah, it's not just a mythical thing that happens in, large organizations like Microsoft, but it happens in small organizations too. Employees, we're going to take stuff to them, right, with them, right? Transferring thousands of files, some of which are labeled with our most internal or important kind of content. Having that detection there can really help with preventing that and showing you, hey, this is happening in your org, stopping it, have those conversations with those employees as they exit, or maybe they're just making accidental poor choices. We can come in and detect all that kind of content. All right, so that's kind of the high level of what insider risk and some of the kind of problems with it. Now, what Microsoft has done is that they have built their own solution to detect this. Again, this was a Microsoft problem that they started designing a solution to kind of meet their own needs. And as part of it, they really wanted a good program approach to doing this. So inside of Microsoft's Compliance Center, we have Insider Risk Management, which is a full another blade of the compliance solution. And it's going to design to give you really in-depth analysis of what end users are doing and a great flow for basically investigating a threat. It's not just an alert and you kind of got to go wild from there of figuring out what exactly happened. It's a nice process associated with detecting and understanding kind of what went on with it. And the reason why they built this is that there was a lot of different fractured approaches. We have a lot of things that do similar type stuff to this product from Microsoft, but none of them are really kind of geared towards that insider risk, right? We have UEBAs, user activity monitoring, and DLP, and all of them kind of touch on some of those same areas that we see of insider risk, some of those same threats, but they're not really integrated in a seamless way to kind of look at the whole picture of a solution, right? When we think about maybe DLP, it's all transactional. This happens, the file hits, it's sent out, and at that time of transaction, that DLP policy is put in place, but it's not really looking at kind of the whole picture of what's going on, right? And it's also not seeing things like the common indicators. So as part of Microsoft's research for this, Microsoft went in and found a lot of kind of indicators that lead to threats that happen in your organization. And so they put together basically this entire solution to detect all of those type of threats, and they went in and said, hey, this is kind of what an insider risk looks like. This is the things that cause it to happen. And so they went and then said, hey, well, we need the data to go in and improve this. So that's where insider risk came in that it's a giant beast of an ML model that's going to pull from tons of different data sources for you to detect those insider risks, right? Those predispositions that they kind of have identified. So they kind of went backwards from how they think about it, right? They started with what insider risk looks like and those kind of indicators of what it went. And then they went and said, where can we get that data to support and detect those risks, right? And so that's kind of how insider risk was built. This picture is very helpful for me to understand kind of all of the different data pieces that go into the insider risk solution from Microsoft. It's not just Office 365 data and activity logs, but it's going to pull from Defender for Cloud App and third-party data sources. So if you integrated AWS in this environment, you could come in and say, well, maybe there's an IT threat where someone's doing something malicious with our virtual machines. If we pull in stuff from Defender for Endpoint, we can look at evasion on your endpoint. Is someone installing security bypass tools? Is there network traffic happen? Are they accessing risky websites, right? We can come in and detect all of that data. Specifically, also, DLP solutions can be brought in both from the endpoint as well as your Office 365 DLP to ingest those audit logs. And again, custom sources also is a really big component of this. And Insider Risk has 3 custom sources that you can ingest into your solution. So depending on your needs, they could be one of these kind of 3 sources. So the big one that I would really recommend every org look at is HR data, right? Performance improvement plans, terminations, all of that is very important when detecting insider risk, because if you looked at this previously, right, predispositions or stressors, like if you're on a performance improvement plan, you're definitely going to have some stressors. Health records, if you're accessing an Epic database for a patient that you're not supposed to be, if the doctor's accessing healthcare records for a celebrity or something like that, that can be an issue, and we want that detected. And then physical access, if they're in a room that they shouldn't be, if someone is badging into the records room and pulling up sensitive data that they shouldn't be seeing physically, we wanted a solution that can cover that. And so really great amount of data that you can bring into the solution, and it's going to help extend the protection that it can do. So that's kind of design of insider risk. High level, just know that this solution is designed to pull in all that content and then correlate all of the different activities. So once it has all that data, different from that transactional approach, it's going to come in and put different pieces of the puzzle together of all the things that an end user is doing, right? So maybe one incident by itself, one upload is not enough to say, hey, that's a risk. But when you start seeing a chain of events like, oh, they downloaded this file from SharePoint, and then they zipped it and encrypted it and then texted it or transferred it via Bluetooth to their own device and then emailed it out, right? Then all of the things start putting together of someone's doing something malicious or someone's doing something negligent with our data of, hey, they just accidentally maybe syncing their own personal OneDrive and downloading all of their content or your content to their personal OneDrive. Well, that's going to really come in and show you all of that because it has access to just a ton of treasure trove of data that it's going to put the pieces of the puzzle together. Right? So that's kind of high level, kind of how insider risk is designed. One important point to note from insider risk is that it really is dependent on these data sources externally. And so as you're thinking about your insider risk and setting up the Microsoft solution for it, you really want to have all of these other point solutions really properly configured. If your Defender for Endpoint isn't detecting network traffic and logins and softwares, if endpoint DLP isn't properly, showing when someone prints or uploads to clouds, you're really going to be hamstringing the solution from being able to properly detect all that because it's just not going to have the data to ingest. Similarly, with like Office 365, audit logging needs to be enabled and tuned properly for your environment. You need to make sure that things like mail items accessed has been properly set up and you're actually auditing all of the capabilities that Office 365. So you make sure as you're thinking about these solutions and insider risk, you also need to touch back in with the security teams that may be managing this to make sure these point solutions are properly configured so that you can actually get the best value out of insider risk. Because again, if you're missing huge parts of, if AWS isn't integrated, you're not going to get detections that someone deleted virtual machines and see that insider threat from happening. Okay, so important note there. The other item that I really wanted to show you is, or explain for insider risk how Microsoft designed it, is that all of that data that we talked about is going to be ingested in, and then there's going to be triggering events that Microsoft is going to use. So again, performance improvement plans, DLP, security, all those different type of things. And how it's going to work is that Microsoft is going to do take that trigger and they're going to look backwards of what happened with the solution and then forwards of that trigger, right? So backwards, last 90 days from the point that maybe a DLP alert hit, right? And they're going to say, hey, what was normal in that period? And then after, or maybe again, maybe it's a HR piece, right, where it's an employee got a performance improvement plan after they only did XYZ amount of activities. They only downloaded 6 days of, in the last 6 days, they only downloaded 170 files. But after, they're uploading a ton of content, transferring to USBs that they did. And so that's how this solution is designed and how it's going to come in and put in place. So I hope high level I kind of covered kind of where the solution fits, how Microsoft design is a part of it, help you with your kind of understanding of what it can do. That being said, let's actually pull up the product because it's one thing to talk about something, it's another to see it live. So let's go ahead and pull up the solution, and we'll see exactly how this looks in your environment potentially. All right. So here it is. Right. A lot of talk to get to just the actual solution now. High level, couple of things that you're going to be able to get out of it is, stats on what is standard in your organization, right? When you turn on the solution, you'll get analytics on, hey, it's common for our end users to do this type of exfiltration, right? Maybe that's just sending emails. Maybe it's sharing. You're going to get nice stats on, hey, this is what our end users do. A nice baseline of this is common in our org, right? So if that's copying to USBs, emailing, downloading, transferring to files, all of that kind of data is going to be high level presented for you in the solution. Additionally, you're going to get a nice big process for detecting this. So in Microsoft's solution, think of it as a policy, right? A policy that we generate here is going to generate an alert. Alerts are then triaged and turned into cases for further investigation and actions in your environment. So the policies are going to be things of, like data theft, data leaks, security policy. These are some of the built-in solutions, kind of categories of how Microsoft is thinking about insider risk. And this list keeps growing as they go. So those are going to be turned into alerts. So we'll target an end user with those policies or a set of the organization. And then from there, we're going to be able to generate kind of the alert activity that we want to see. right? In this case, this is a healthcare, I'll open up a different one. In this case, it's obligations during departure, right? How did this data come in? Well, an HR connector, the HR data, detected that the employee was terminated or is resigning. And because of that, we get to see kind of this history of what they are doing, right? Here is their termination date, and this was normal from them before the termination date, and then this is what happened after their termination date, right? And this is kind of the delta. After we've seen this activity happen, right, there may be some risk in it, right? So the idea with the alert is it's going to come to you for triage, right? We're going to be able to come in and see, yes, look, a file with sensitivity labels like highly confidential was detected that they were using. They were doing some stuff with US Social Security numbers. In high level, you're able to come in, see kind of what was happening in this environment, see that, hey, they sent a lot of emails externally or copied files to USB, and then you can take this alert and convert it into a case. As part of it, you're going to be able to see the full history of everything that they're doing in your environment. So whether that be, copying files, transferring files, it's a ton of data, again, a treasure trove of content that they can see of exactly what's happening in this policy, right? Whether it be a DLP event or file creations, downloading, uploading stuff to websites, all of that kind of data is put into this nice story mode so that you can investigate it and build that detections from it. Once it's converted to a case, well, that's where you're going to be looking at, more of the in-depth actions. That's where you can bring in like legal, work with other team members, and pull in some of that kind of other items. So I can put case notes in here. I can, pull up again, same like user story kind of policy here of this is exactly what happened in each of these items. And then I'm able to pull up Content Explorer and really get in depth with what actually the content was that those end users were using, right? So this is really nice from a investigation standpoint. You don't just have to look at the audit logs to say, hey, this is what happened here. But if it's a cloud file, you can actually pull up the file and see, exactly the content that the end users was uploading, transferring, emailing, sending. All of that data is going to be brought into the solution to really make the case like maybe we really need to press charges against this end user that's doing this, or something along those lines. And so that's kind of the solution breakdown you're going to be able to see here, right? When we can, hop into kind of each of these different tabs, pull up all of this, but it really gives you a nice business process for, tracking these threats and investigating them. Okay. A couple other nice things that they are really working hard to build in is the collaboration aspects of it, right? So we can come in and as defenders, so maybe you're not ready to have access to this, but you would want to be able to create a Microsoft Teams about this threat. So you can come in, create a Microsoft team, and then have this link to this case where you're going to be doing this investigation, right? So if, again, you needed to bring in legal and maybe physical security team to investigate this threat, you can come in and create this team directly from the solution. If you wanted to do a bunch of different automations, you can as well. So if you wanted to say, hey, we want to do this custom thing, maybe, in this case, maybe for an accidental type solution, you're going to automate sending a notice to the end users, reminding them, hey, this is the proper use of how you secure our data. This is the proper, acceptable use policy for our organization. And here is the detection that we did that you were doing. And then, of course, you can also escalate this and bring in this as like an e-discovery case, like you're going to press charges at this point. And so that's kind of a roughed out solution, right? And so it's a nice set of policies that you can do here and take advantage of. And again, really in-depth. The value add for me above DLP is that this is two things. Really high quality alerts that you can do. If you're used to using DLP from Microsoft, if you don't have a lot of tuning that you've done, it can be way more effort than it's worth to investigate a lot of those DLP items, right? You might have to go out and use a bunch of different solutions to detect it. The insider risk management alerts are very high quality, and it gives your team that's investigating this a very seamless experience for investigating those items. So that's really the value add for me in here. And then if you're looking at any of those other type of scenarios where it's pulling in all of that data, really puts together, again, a lot different, like, that correlated approach versus transactional really extends and helps detect that way beyond kind of the traditional DLP approach to slings in the solution. Okay. All right, so that's high level the solution. If there's any questions that you have, please put them into chat. We're going to be wrapping up pretty quick. But I also wanted to talk about what's new in the solution. If you use the Microsoft solution in the last year or so, as any Microsoft solution, there's new stuff that's coming out constantly. So what's new in insider risk? Let's talk about that. So a couple of the items that are brand new that they're going to be adding to the solution is chained events, right? So activities that can detect patterns in common chains. So if an end user downloads and then exfiltrates a file, we really want to start looking at those things as a chain of activities. And so when we start setting up our alert policies, a new feature we can do is to target when these things happen in chained, because those can really indicate more malicious intent for a lot of it, right? So if I'm downloading and zipping a file and then exfiltrating it and then deleting it off SharePoint, well, that's definitely a lot more planning that went into a threat than simply, oh, I downloaded and accidentally uploaded a file or downloaded and put it on the USB. There is some hiding going on with this type of threats. So that's a new detection capability. As part of the solution, Microsoft is rolling out these chained events. So when we look at a threat or look at filtering a lot of this kind of stuff, we can see when that is happening. Other investments that Microsoft is making is new indicators, right? Again, they're constantly trying to go into and say, hey, we need this content to help with this detection. And so they've added a lot of new indicators in the last 6 months to the solution. And here's some samples of that kind of activity that we can now see. So copied files to remote desktop session. Defender for Cloud App is really coming in and leveraging third-party cloud solutions. So again, VMs, suspicious admin activities in those cloud, kind of components, right? If someone did something in Salesforce Admin Center, we can now come in and say, oh, it wasn't just failed logins, it's suspicious activity, suspicious admin activities. So again, nice solution that Microsoft is pulling in, and they're really working hard to add more value to you as you go. The final new indicator is going to be risky browser data, right? So Defender for Endpoint can now actually pull in all of the, hey, websites that any users are accessing, whether that be, hacking sites or, illegal software downloads or whatnot. And then we can use that to do a full another set of detections, right? And so this is going to be, a nice add-on component that you could theoretically take advantage of as you're building it. If you've used insider risk in the past, we definitely recommend going back in at this point and updating your policies, making sure you double check all those indicators, make sure that you are bringing in all of that content that we talked about as new, right? Because they keep on adding in it, and it's not going to default go back in and say, hey, you need to bring this back in. Okay, so good solution to double check. Good time to pause and say, hey, the team that maybe had used it in the past, pulled in that data again, let's double check, let's polish things up, because again, a lot of new features are coming in. The final really exciting one that Microsoft has really recently added is forensic evidence. And so this is a nice, again, solution to come in and say, it's not just maybe, hey, the audit logs that you're going to look at, but with forensic evidence, you can actually have screenshot recordings of people's desktops to come in and show the activity that you are wanting to do. It's nice. It does, really thinking about privacy as part of the solution. So you do have to hit approve. You have to have a chain of, hey, saying that you're going to audit log someone that's part of the solution. But we're going to now be able to pull up full screenshots of exactly what the end users were doing in our solution. So let's go ahead and look at that and see what that will look like. In this case, I had a Jeff Leatherman, the classic Microsoft user, did some, insider risk items, right? And so we can come in and pull up, the video of what he was doing in the solution, right? And so this is what I was just activating it. But let's go down to when we actually did some uploads or malicious uploads in our environment. I believe this is, so this was the end user in this case. So end user is, hit on a DLP alert. They were uploading content. And so with this add-on component, forensic evidence, we're able to get full screenshot video of, kind of the activity that they're doing in here. So we're able to pull this up, have, kind of these screenshots of their site, and then kind of go from there to see exactly, kind of what they did, right? So in that case, it was just kind of the screenshots of the, them transferring over to a website. But if I go into the proper one, if I find the actual video I was trying to show, it actually has a full screencast of me uploading, credit card files to the Microsoft solution in here, right? And so good kind of capability you can take advantage of. The paint is still very wet on this one, right? So it's a very fresh, very new solution from Microsoft. And so, it's not fully baked in. It's probably only going to be available in GCC. This is the video I wanted to show. In the next, probably 6 months, I expect it to show in GCC, but I highly expect this to be delayed. It's not properly working in a lot of the other Microsoft tenants currently. And so do expect that the forensic evidence to show up eventually, but it might take a few minutes before it actually starts working there. So great question. Okay. But this is the, the type of activity you can see, or it's full recording. It's almost like screenshot type recording though, so it's not, a live stream. It doesn't take a lot of process on the endpoint, but it has, the kind of the components where you can see in here exactly when the end user was transferring files and uploading it to, in this case, dlptest.com, right? So that's kind of the new exciting stuff from Microsoft that they're working on there, really trying to build a solution that customers are asking for. Again, the nice thing is with this team is they are, really dedicated to tackling what team members or, the IT folks that they're working with are asking for. So make sure that you're working with your team if there's specific questions that you have about the solution or things that you specifically want built. Your Microsoft rep can definitely communicate that, and this team from Microsoft is really focused on building the solution that customers want. And so if there's requests, there's something that the solution doesn't currently do, make sure you ask for it, because that's how they design their solutions. Okay. So I hope that covers kind of the new fun stuff for you with Insider Risk, and explains kind of what it is, how you can use it, gives you kind of a preview of it, and then of course what's new from Microsoft. If you have questions about the solution, I would love to answer those for you and support you however I can. If you put that into chat, I'll be definitely able to answer that question at this time. Or if you'd like, you can always email me at my Patriot account, and I'll be happy to get you supported and tackle those threats. All right, so that's it for today. I hope this was helpful. And again, I can stick around for a few minutes if you have any questions. If not, you all have a wonderful rest of your day.